So I want to give you guys some practice reading velocity versus time graphs and thinking about what's happening in these. So here's an example where the starting velocity is 0. And I know that because at time 0, it's at a height of 0. So that means that at 0 seconds, it's going 0 meters per second. And as time goes on, you'll notice that it gets farther up on the vertical axis. So let's say this is 20 meters per second. Now, I don't actually know what that number is, but I've found that if you give it a number, it makes more sense. So if it starts at 0 and it goes to 20, that must be speeding up. So then this is speeding up. To determine if the acceleration is positive or negative, I need to look at the slope because the slope on a velocity versus time graph is the acceleration. So, because this slope of the line is positive, that means my acceleration is also going to be a positive acceleration. And the last one is it going forwards or going backwards? So I like to define a positive velocity as going forwards because on the x-axis, the positive direction is to the right. And so I like to say that that is going forwards. And then anytime I have a positive velocity, I'm going to have it going forwards. And if you look over here on the axes, on the y-axis or the velocity axis, all of these numbers that I could write here would all be positive numbers. Therefore, this is going forwards because all of these are positive velocities. But let's take a look at another one. Let's say now instead it's going down like this. What is this one doing? Well, let's say that this starts at 20 meters per second. And then at some time in the future, let's call it 10 seconds, it's at a height of 0, which means that that is 0 meters per second. Well, if I was going 20 and now I'm not moving, that means that I've slowed down. And is this a positive or negative acceleration? Well, the way that we look at that is we look at the slope of the line. Again, this slope is equal to my acceleration. And because it's going downhill, that's a negative acceleration. So it's slowing down with a negative acceleration. Is it going forwards or going backwards? Well, if it was going backwards, it would have to have a negative velocity, and negative velocities are down here. The above the horizontal axis are all of my positive velocities. So this is going forwards. Now, it is going forwards, but slowing down. And that's why the slope is negative. But let's look at this again. Now I want to look at this and have it have a positive slope down here and talk about what that means and what would it mean if it had a negative slope down there. So the first thing I need to think about is it speeding up, slowing down, or moving with a constant velocity? So again, I'm going to look at it. Oh, right here it's like at negative 20. Here it's at 0 meters per second. Ah, well, if it was moving and now it's not moving, I must have slowed down. Okay, so if you drive really fast going backwards and your parent is sitting in the passenger seat and goes, slow down, then you're going to stop. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you're going forwards or backwards, you can slow down. And the way you slow down is having your velocity get closer to 0. So here we get closer to 0 by going up. Up here, when we slowed down, we got closer to 0 by going closer to the horizontal axis as well. Now, the next question is this a positive or a negative acceleration? And again, the slope of this is your acceleration. Now, it's slowing down though. So, is this a positive acceleration or a negative acceleration? Because if I'm slowing down, you want to tell me that it's decelerating. but I don't want to use the word deceleration because that's confusing. In the common language, when people say decelerating, what they really mean is slowing down. So I do not want you to say decelerating. I want you to say speeding up or slowing down. And then I want you to tell me, is it a positive acceleration or a negative acceleration? So this slope right here is a positive slope. That means that this is a positive acceleration because it has a positive slope. And lastly, is it going forwards or going backwards? Well, your velocity was negative. Your velocity is actually negative the whole time. And so that means that I'm going backwards. And so I know it's negative because all the numbers over here would be negative velocities. Therefore, I'm going backwards. And last but not least, we have this example. Is it speeding up, slowing down, or constant velocity? Think about it and guess. So I start with a 0 velocity. And then down here, it's like, I don't know, -20. Well, that's like you were in park and you put your car in reverse and now you're going backwards at 20 meters per second. So you sped up. Is it a positive or negative acceleration? Well, the slope here is negative. So I have a negative acceleration. And I know that I'm going backwards because all the numbers that I could write down here where this line is are all negatives. Therefore, I am going backwards. Now, this is weird. How am I speeding up with a negative acceleration? Oh, let's do it up here. My acceleration was positive, and my velocity direction was also positive, and that caused me to speed up. But this one, the second one, I had a positive velocity, but a negative acceleration. And because they're in opposite directions, that caused me to slow down. Again, for this one, I had an object with a positive acceleration and a negative velocity because I was going backwards. Well, these are in opposite directions. And when they're in opposite directions, they end up canceling each other out and it causes you to slow down. And last but not least, we have this last one where I am going backwards, which means I have a negative velocity. And I also have a negative acceleration. Well, if I have a negative velocity and a negative acceleration, that means that I am speeding up. So when they go in the same direction, I'm going to speed up. When they are in opposite directions, I'm going to slow down. The other way you can tell if things are speeding up or slowing down looking at this is if it gets farther away from the horizontal axis, it's speeding up. If it's getting closer to that 0 velocity, then it is slowing down. If you have questions or looking for more examples, let me know.